Now, before I forget, I'm going to just mention something here. During the presentation, I said something about AWS being available in a lot of zones, a lot of regions. Okay, and I'm going to show us how to actually navigate through those regions and how to access those regions. Okay, so at the top here, top right corner, you would see a few things. This is our account. This is me. And by the side, you would see Ireland. Okay, this is to tell you that this is the location that it is using for my account, right? And I did mention that if you have multiple organizations, or you want to set up your account in a different geographical zone or a different geographical region, you can easily do that. Okay, so we can simply drop down this and it will load up all the possible regions that we can create our an account in. Okay, so currently we are using the Europe Ireland, which is the EU West one. If I want to say, hey, I'm opening up a branch in the US, or I want to set up some infrastructure in the US using the US data center, okay, I can simply say, okay, let me create an account in California, which is the US West. Keep in mind that whatever services that you set up in each of the different regions, they will not be connected to other regions. Okay, so they're completely separate. If you see here, we are in the same page, which is instances, but we're in a different region. Okay, and you would see that there are no instance created. If you remember, in Ireland we have two servers that we created there, but in this region we have no server. So that's to tell you that if you create services in different regions, they are separate and isolated from one another. Okay, so it's like creating a different branch in a different company or in a different organization, and they don't communicate with each other. If you want services to communicate, or you want servers to communicate from one region to another, then you can, use something called a VPN, or you can set up, a private network between both, companies. Similarly to what you would do if you have, different branches in different locations in real life or on premises. All right. So you can proceed to create an instance here as well, and it's pretty much the same as you would do on the previous region. Okay, just to let you know that that AWS allows you to to create different resources in different regions. This is one of the features of AWS that is kind of different from what um, Azure provides you with, because on Azure you can certainly create resources or services in different regions, but they are not quite isolated from each other. Okay, you can create different resources, but they can be, they're visible to one another. You can simply see it, but the only way that you want them to communicate is through networking. So it's more like a streamlined. It's more, I would say, the platform is more simple than Azure in terms of that, because it clearly gives you, separated accounts for your regions, and you can sign into different ones depending on what your, the region that you want. As opposed to Azure, where everything is in the same place, you just need to know what server was created in what region, and you can easily specify that. Okay, so we'll go back to the island account, which is where we were initially. And once we sign back in there, you would see that our servers are back, because this is the region that we created our server. Okay, so that's it about EC2 instances. They are pretty much virtual machines that you can create on the cloud, set up your applications on them, set up your, it could be anything. If it's a web application, you can set it up on that server, and it's all working on the cloud space on AWS. The monitoring is pretty much the same. If you see, or if you saw when we were creating the instance, you will notice that for each compute resources that we selected, the price was there. Okay, so for this one, you are charged, I think, 0.0003 something dollars per is it per second or per minute, and so it's more like a pay as you go. For a company that has a lot of servers or lots of EC2s running, at the end of the month they would get the bill, and it might be a lot. Okay, so the next thing we will talk about now or take a look at is CloudWatch. Okay, but before we look at CloudWatch, I want us to take a look at let's see, VPCs. We already talked about VPCs being the networking part of AWS, but they have their own dedicated service, which we're going to go into now. Okay, so what are VPCs? VPCs are virtual private cloud, which is what AWS uses mainly for its networking and connecting each of its services together. Okay, so here in part of the cloud base, where you have your NAT gateways. You can create subnets, VPC peering connections. For some of you who have a networking background, this would look very familiar to you, which is where you can streamline your networking, your infrastructure networking on the cloud as well. Earlier, I talked about VPNs and how you can use that to connect to different regions or different servers across different regions. If you scroll down, you see something called side-to-side VPNs. If you are a networking person, you would know what that is. It's it's a type of VPN that you set up to communicate with different branches in different regions, which is what you would set up if you want to communicate with your servers or your services in other regions. Okay, so this is a brief overview of the networking side of things, mainly VPCs, and currently we have one running, which is the default, and this one is what our um, servers are connected to. Okay, the servers that we created, if you remember, a VPC was automatically assigned to it, and that is what this is what we're connected to, and this is what controls the networking of the server right now. Okay, you can do some more research on or some training on what and how the VPC works, and if you want to be more interested in the networking part of things, you can understand fully how it works and the intricacies behind it. Okay. As I mentioned, you can set up different securities for your network. We have the network ACLs, create security groups as we did before, DNS firewalls, domain lists, rule groups, firewall protection, TLS inspections, and all of that. So you can play around with this if you are into networking or if you want to understand. So AWS, when you're thinking of a career, to be honest, there are different parts of it. You cannot know every single part of AWS. It's a cloud platform. There are tons of services and they're creating more services every day. But you need to create a niche for yourself. And what I mean is, if you want to be a and the DevOps part of things, I'm going to show you a service that is specifically for the DevOps people. Okay, if you want to work as an administrator, then you should know bits and pieces of every services that is there. But if you want to specialize in the networking part of things, you can be, a cloud network specialist. If you want to be a security part of things, you can be a security specialist as well. Okay, there are um, specific exams, but specific professional exams in AWS for those fields. So you can take a look at that later. All right. So the next thing I want to touch on is Route 53, which is one service that I forgot to show us on the drawing. Now, what is Route 53? If you're familiar with domains and DNSs, you would know that if let's say you're creating a web application or a website, and you want to set up your website to example.html, com or something like that, you need to go to a domain registrar to buy or register your domain. And after registering your domain, you can then proceed, to attach it to your website. In this case, you don't need to go too far. One of the services that AWS provides, Azure also has this service, is to allow you to register a domain, register a traffic, and register a hosted zone, which allows you to have easy access to connect your domains to your services as needed. Okay, so in this case, it's called Route 53. This is where you come to register a domain. All right. Let's say we want to do NGO test. I'm not sure if our free subscription will allow us, but let's give it a try. If you want to do ngotest.com, let's see if it's available. A moment. Okay, it's not available. All right, but as you can see, you can select any of the available domains, or you can just try a different name. You could do tests Nigeria.com. Let's do NGO. Where is it? Do this. In use or available to somebody else before it shows us, okay, this ngotraining.com is available, and you can register it at $13 per year. Okay, so depending on what you want, you can simply say, oh, I want this domain because it's my company domain. If your company uses a different name, it's fine. You can register a domain on Route 53, and it will be available for you to use on whatever service that you have set up. Okay, so we'll leave here because most of this is a paid service and it's not free. Just to show you how it actually works. And now Route 53 does have a domain registered. Then you would have access to the DNS management of that domain, where you would be able to set up and attach certain things. Okay, so you can read on domains and DNS management using Route 53 on AWS. It's one of the services that you would definitely play around with, because some of the services that you would set up on the cloud require you to integrate your domains to them. Okay, so you can read up on that on your own time, but this service is what controls Route 53 is what controls domain registration and DNS management on AWS. Okay, so the next thing we'll talk about or look at is the S3, which is the storage on, there we go, S3, which is the storage on AWS. This is what controls majorly the object storage in AWS. And how does it work? You create a bucket in S3, and that bucket is what keeps all your files for a particular service. Okay, so every object, and by object I mean, let's take an instance, for instance. Um, if we say, oh, we've created a virtual machine, EC2 instance, the storage would be stored in S3 in a specific bucket. Okay, and in that bucket, that is where all the files that we worked on that server or that virtual machine will be stored in. So this controls pretty much all the storage of AWS. And you can there's a video here just to give you a brief introduction on how it works. Okay, um, customers and AWS account holders, we use this to store and protect any amount of data, virtually at any use case. Okay, and we also use this for cloud native applications, mobile apps, and it's very cost effective. Depending on what storage classes that you want to use. And yeah, we also use this for backup and restore, retentions, and all of that. It's a storage platform that is available to us on AWS. Azure has its own. They have the blob storage and the RDS and all of that. So very similarly to AWS as well, we also have the RDS for database storage. In one moment. So I'll do RDS. Okay. So we click on RDS. This will take us to the RDS service, which is, you know, yeah, the Amazon RDS is where we, create your databases. It could be MySQL or any of the NoSQL databases there, Dynamo, and the likes. For those of you who are database administrators or want to go into database management and you want to do it on the cloud, this is the service for you. You would need this to, to create and pretty much, you know, manage your databases. Okay, and it allows you to create faster failovers and typically less than 35 seconds, and it allows for scalability and also you know create like at least two available standby database instances by deploying them. Okay, so this is a service for you if you want to look into databases on AWS. um, this is for you. We won't go deep into this because like I said, each service is a different um, thing on its own, and it can take you need to be well learned on what you want to actually set up, because every service that you do set up, you would most likely be paid for, and you would pay for it. So be careful, especially if you're working for a company. Every service that you do use on the cloud will be billed at the end of the month. So please take note of that.